What do fear, anxiety, and pain have in common? Welcome back to the Crack the Code podcast. I'm your host, Cora Naylor. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Today is the first day, it's just going to be me. We're going to do a solo episode, and we're going to be talking about what's behind those fear, anxiety, and chronic pains, and what is in common. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. It's the same kind of thing, but different for each one. And it's emotions. Just like the name of the podcast, Crack the Code, that's all about the emotion code and how finding the emotions that are causing our issues can hold us back from doing the things that we want in our life. So you might be sitting there and thinking, well, what the heck is the emotion code? I've never heard of this thing before. So let's dive into that a little bit. The emotion code is a process for releasing negative trapped emotions. It was developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson, who is a retired chiropractor. He wrote a book about it and created a chart with 60 negative emotions on it. So we can figure out which emotions are causing our issues and release them. Now, the emotion code, how we release those emotions, and I'll go into all that, what the steps are, the 7 keys to the emotion code. We'll go into that a little bit today. But the average person, Dr. Brad figures, the average person has about 200 or 300 trapped emotions. So as we go through our life and we go through events and things happen to us, if we don't process the emotions, they get trapped in our body like little balls of energy. The average person has about 200 or 300 trapped emotions, depending on what's happened in your past. And what I find when I'm going through this work is a lot of this stuff happens in our youth, like when we're young kids, or possibly even in the womb, or inherited from our mums or dads, or even further back. So the good news is that we can release these emotions. For a lot of us, maybe they're not going to get in our way, and that's okay. But if you're trying to do anything that gets out of your comfort zone, your subconscious kind of says, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? And it's trying to protect you. So it's hanging on to all this stuff to keep you safe, but can make it hard to let you move forward. And maybe you have some things you want to do. I know for myself, becoming an entrepreneur and doing all those kinds of things, I'm always having to get out of my comfort zone, like starting a podcast or, doing speaking at events. That's all kinds of things that are just not natural for me to do. So how this whole process works is, like I said, there is a chart. And if you're seeing this on video, you'll see the chart. If you're listening, you can go and Google the chart, the emotion code, and you'll see all the emotions that are on there. And so what happens is we use a process to release those. So the first thing we're going to do is, when working with someone, how I would work with you, say if I was having a session with you, is I would connect to your subconscious using muscle testing. Now, I know that might sound a little bit woo-woo for some people, but it's really quite interesting. It's all about energy, because we are all energy. And if you're not familiar with what muscle testing is, you can go online, Google some videos on that one. There's all kinds of different methods you can use. Something that's really common you might have seen is where someone will ask a person a question, they have their arm sticking out, and when it's a no, that arm just flops down. If it's a yes, you can't push that arm down. I use a method called the ring method. And so each person does something a little bit different. They all work. But it's just a way to be able to talk to your subconscious and ask it yes and no answer questions. Now, you can't use muscle testing for predicting things, but you can use it for a lot of different things. I know some people, if you have a hard time making choices in the morning, sometimes you can ask your subconscious, you can't decide what to wear. Should I wear this or that? Those simple questions are things that you can do to practice using it. And the cool thing is, one thing I loved about this method is that you don't have to be in person to use it. You can do it from a distance. I do a lot of Zoom calls with this one, or phone calls, sometimes even by email. It's quite amazing. I actually worked with a lady recently who had emailed me. She was having some issues with needing validation all the time. And we released some emotions, and she said she can't believe how much better she feels. So most people do notice right away that they just feel lighter. It's like getting that emotional baggage that we're carrying around on our shoulders and releasing that. And so, like I was saying, what does the fears, anxiety, and pain have in common? They all have emotions attached to them. So the first thing we'd need to do to get into those emotions and to release those emotions is I need to get your permission. We can't just go willy-nilly and release emotions for people, although it would be kind of fun. And I know a lot of people could use this help, but I do have to get your permission first. And if you're with adults, if it's for your kids, because sometimes your kids are going through stuff. I know I would love to have known this process when my kids were young and in school. There's so many times this would have been so helpful to just help them get through some of the stuff they had to go through, especially if your kids have to deal with bullying or, self-esteem issues. This would be fantastic. And then you can also use it for animals. So if you've got some pets that are feeling anxious and needing some help, this is a great process for that. So using it from a distance, once I have your permission, then that just means that I'm going to be your proxy. So I'm going to do the work on myself as if I'm you. So that's really cool. And one of the nice things that I loved about this whole process is I don't need to know your backstory, and you don't have to tell me. A lot of times I think people are nervous about doing something like the emotion code because they think it's going to be like counseling, and I'm going to need to, talk to you and dig into all the stuff that happened to you in your past. And the great thing is I don't need to know it, and you don't need to tell it to me. One of the things we can do, though, is we can find out how old you were when some of these events took place. And that might bring up some memories for you so that you'll know exactly what was going on at that time. However, if you don't remember, that's okay too. It's not a requirement in order to release the emotions. Because for each event that you've had over the years, you can have multiple emotions that get trapped from the event, but each event has its own emotions. So you can't just go through the chart and say, oh, there's these 60 emotions, release them and be done with it. It doesn't really work like that. So you have to find this specific event and release it from there. And then we use the muscle testing. And like I said, I use a ring method where I just have my ring fingers and my thumb together. When I'm asking the question, if it's a yes, that just stays really tight. And if it's a no, my fingers just slip apart. And so I can go through this chart because it's nicely put into a grid and say, oh, is it in column A or column B? And then which row is it in? And then we can narrow it down to which emotion in which row, in which box that it's in, and then release them. And we release them using a magnet. And so what we do, and it can be any kind of magnet, you don't need anything special. It can be a fridge magnet. A lot of people have really cool ones that they get from different companies. And you're just going to swipe it for most of the emotions anyways, 3 times over your head, which just covers the governing meridian, which goes from your nose all the way down to the bottom of your spine. And that is just dissipates the energy out, kind of like if you're releasing the magnetic strip off of a credit card, just dissipates it. And then you can start to feel lighter. You might have to go through a little bit of processing, but you don't have to relive the event. That's the good thing. And what we can do when we're starting is we can check the severity. So I'll muscle test to find out, what the severity is out of a 1 to 10. And then we release the emotions, and then we'll test again. Now, some things might go away as a one and done. Sometimes it's like the layers of the onion. You peel off a layer and then another layer comes up. So for some specific things, it might take a few sessions or so to release the emotions that are causing those things. So like I said, fear, anxiety, pain, those are a few of the things that can have emotions attached to them. So sometimes, it might be something, maybe you have a pain, like that pain in your neck or your back or your hip. And it's kind of an unexplained pain. You go to the doctor and there's like, well, there's not really anything wrong with you. I don't know what it is. It might be that you have some emotion that's hidden in your body there that you need to release. Or sometimes it's partly physical, partly emotional. So at least if we can release the emotional part of it, that can allow your body to heal on its own better. Other things we can use the emotion code for, one of the things I was using it for when I first started, I met a lady that did the emotion code and did some sessions with her. Years ago, I had been in a bad car accident and I got rear-ended twice in the same accident. So I got rear-ended and then jumped over to another lane and got rear-ended again. So I was always terrified to see cars coming up to me in my rear view mirror. And then I always wanted to be the driver because I needed to be in control. So one of the things that the practitioner released for me was that fear and that anxiety about, you know, being in control and being the driver and, seeing those cars coming up. And it was a huge relief to get that done. The other thing that comes up a lot of times is for heart walls. And I'll go into heart walls again on another episode. But that's just when you have, relationships that don't work out properly, or, you just, something's happened in your life. And so literally these emotions build up as a wall around your heart. And so it can block you off from feeling having the relationships that you want. And I know for me, when I originally had my heart wall released and a hidden heart wall, it really made a difference in how I reacted with other people and how other people reacted with me. So the last thing we need to know about this whole process is to make sure you're hydrated when you're doing it. That just helps the energy flow. We just need that hydration, and hydration is important for so many things anyways, as far as our whole health and everything that we're doing. So if you have any of those issues, I would love to have a chat with you. If you want to learn more about the emotion code, get the book. You can get it, on Amazon, wherever you want to. It's called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. You can learn to do the process yourself by reading the book. You get the basics of how it works. And if you do, I would love your comments to hear how it went for you. Because you know what, if you have things that are going on and you're looking for a way to make it better, know that there is a way out there. Just keep looking, because there's so many different modalities that can help you out, because it's never too late.